on, Chanda?
Go.
It's going.
All right, we're live.
Hey, how you guys?
Hi.
Look, welcome to Game.Set.Chat at a serious distance.
You're not kidding, all of us.
Yeah, this is actually, just want to let you guys know out there, we've had some Facebook challenges, but we're on. And, as Billy would say, champions adjust.
Exactly, Zina. We've just been talking about that very same thing, and it's just exciting for me, first of all, to be on with you, Zina. We've been friends for a long time. We've been through a lot from, playing together early on, practicing together, playing matches, being influenced by Billie Jean King, who we are lucky enough to have here on our first show, sharing some of her insights, her experience. I mean, we could talk to Billie for hours. We will have just an hour today, but it's going to be so much fun. Looking forward to these topics.
Billie, we just want to let you know, first of all, I consider you like, a godmother to me, and I'm always talking. And it's so funny getting an opportunity to talk to you, because when I mentioned that I know you, so many people's like, what is she really like? Is she like the way that we see her, so much inspiration? I'm like, Billie has always helping you to be the best that you could possibly be. So what basically, where did this come from?
I think it came, I'm not really sure. I knew at 7 I was going to do something great with my life. I told my mother, and I was drying the dishes. I always had to dry the dishes at night. This is before dishwasher days, back in the 50s. And my mom says, that's fine. Just keep drying those dishes. Because I said, Mommy, I'm going to be great. I know I'm going to do something great with my life. And she's like, okay, keep going. She was great about keeping my brother and me very even and grounded. And then when I was introduced to tennis by Susan Williams, the 5th grader, she said, do you want to play tennis? And I grew up in team sports. I grew up in basketball and volleyball, baseball, softball, everything but an individual sport.
You were a true athlete.
What? Oh, yeah. I'm a jock. I love track and field. My dad was good at baseball. My brother became a professional baseball player for 12 years, Randy Moffett. Moffat's our birth name. He played most of those years with the San Francisco Giants. He did play with the Astros 1 year, and he played with the Toronto Blue Jays. But at 11, when Susan introduced me to tennis, I went out to the Park and Rec. I found out they had free instruction and coaching, and then I knew it was a possibility because my dad was a firefighter, and I knew there was no way that I could go to country clubs and play. And so the first day I went out and met Clyde Walker at Houghton Park for my very, very first time, at the end of the session, I knew I wanted to be the #1 tennis player in the world. And that was great. But then if you want to fast forward to 13 years old, that's when I really had my epiphany. And I noticed that everybody who played tennis wore white socks, white shoes, white clothes, played with white balls, and everybody who played was white. And I asked myself, I go, where's everybody else? And then that same year, I got to see Althea Gibson, who was the first African-American I ever saw play. And of course, she was #1. And she taught me, if you can see it, you can be it. Because I saw what #1 looked like and how good you had to be. And I went, oh my God, I've got to practice so hard if I'm going to ever be #1. And then in our household, we're always taught that every generation gets better.
Yeah.
So I thought, then we're going to have to be better? I don't know how I'm going to do that. So she was such a hero of mine, and I got her book when I always wanted to be somebody. She published it in 1958 when I was about 14 years old. I read it. I slept with it. I slept with my racket. I just dreamed about being #1, and then also knowing that tennis was global. I also knew tennis, like Wimbledon. You go, outside the United States. I go, wow, this is an opportunity for me to have, I didn't know the word platform in those days, but that's what I was thinking. This would be a way for maybe I could make a difference and really fight for equality the rest of my life. And just, and then also I knew girls, particularly, and of course I'm a white girl, but I knew my sisters of color would have it tougher. But even as a woman, boy, we're a distant second. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. It's always interesting because I always tell that story. Right before Althea died, you and I had an opportunity to go and sit and talk to her. And I never forget myself just watching you and Althea talk, and just, it's like I'm sitting there and like, okay, I am next to Billie Jean King and Althea Gibson. Like, it does not get any better.
Yeah, that's it. That's incredible. Well, before we keep going, I want to just let everybody, because we have a lot of people who are popping in, who are listening, who are excited about this. Yes,
this is the first one. Game.Set.Chat.
The messages keep coming. But I just wanted to kind of let everybody know how this idea kind of came about. So Zina called me on Sunday. This was this past Sunday morning. Chanda, I've got an idea. It stemmed from wanting to really work through her academy, Zina Garrison Academy, and trying to create some things we could do to raise money, to raise awareness, to help those who were struggling during this time. And she came up with this idea, and we kind of massaged it around. It took a few days. We're looking at, okay, how can we make this work? The technology, what platforms can we use, and going and so forth and so on. And literally until the final moment, we were still working some of those things out. But Zina, you called Billie, and immediately Billie was in. And this is just a testament to how Billie has been throughout, certainly my life, knowing her. She is just there to help. She's all in. And I just want to say thank you, Billie, first and foremost, for being our first guest, going in on faith, because I'm sure you wonder how you're going to pull this off. So thank you.
We have a lot of history. I know we've had a lot of experiences together, and I love what Z's trying to do with the Academy. She's been trying to do it over 20 years now. I got to go to the 20th celebration, which was a wonderful night. It was an amazing night to see everybody, meet some of the kids particularly, and also the board and people who do really care about tennis in Zina's Academy, and with John Wilkerson and all the wonderful people. So it's amazing. Also, going back to Althea, didn't she come to the finals in 1990 at Wimbledon?
Oh,
when you were in the finals? I remember that. Is that correct?
Oh,
she
Billie,
flew in to watch you, I think,
can
right?
you see my face? Oh, my goodness. She came. She walked into the locker room. She came. She walked into the locker room. I was calm, as I can calm be, being in, my first and only final, getting ready to play Martina Navratilova. And she says, Z, this is where I had my champagne when I won. And everything just broke loose. I started sweating. And I was like, oh, my God, I'm in the finals of Wimbledon. Like, what the heck am I going to do now? So
you earned it.
Playing somebody like Martina, who had lost to probably 35 times and I only beat her one time, I was like, well, I'm in the Wimbledon finals, but Althea, it would have really been nice if Althea would have waited to see me afterwards.
That would have been easier. Yeah, but what I don't think a lot of people realize who you beat that tournament. You beat Sellis and Groff, one after the other, which is an amazing feat. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I think people have to know that. How did you even get to the finals? You had to do a lot of upsets to get there.
Absolutely. People don't realize how cutthroat Zina was, I think, because you look at it, I'm just saying, cutthroat and a competitor. Okay, I remember my first time seeing her, I was 15. There's some people that kind of know this story, but I was invited to Houston, to McGregor Park, to practice with Zina and Lori and John, and I was a young pro, watching some tennis on TV, but in Lafayette, Louisiana, not really around a lot of great players. I would go to tournaments and maybe, have a chance to see some of these other players. But this was my first experience. These were top 10 women in the world. And I knew it. And I was like, okay, what am I in for? I had no idea. But it was an amazing experience. And it's something that really set the tone for how I would eventually sort of work and, give it my all, how professional I was out there, because, they just got down and they did it. It was hot in Houston. We ran the bayou, went through drills, John with his wit and sarcasm, which I loved right out of the gate. But it was an incredible experience to be around great players that weren't far from where I lived and who looked like me, who I could at least relate to. You talk about Althea and being able to sit down and talk to her and Billie. It's incredible how powerful those experiences are and how you remember that, and kind of sets the tone for how you operate when you're out there in those situations.
Right. Well, that's, you do stand on the shoulders of the generations before you. And I certainly stood on Althea Gibson's shoulders and other people like Alice Marble and others. There's so many. But and of course, Chanda, we had some experiences on the Fed Cup team too.
Fed Cup.
Oh, we've had some fun times.
Incredible.
We have to share. Come on, share.
Well, I just remember Raleigh. I started laughing internally, and I'm trying not to laugh. I'm the captain. I'm the coach. So Chanda, we change hands. We're playing Croatia, I think, and we're playing in Raleigh. It's supposed to be an away match, but it was too nervous over there with the wars going on, and so we played in Raleigh, and I think it was Raleigh. Wasn't it Raleigh? I think so. And you change hands. You go, God, I'm so tense, Billy. I don't know what to do. And I go, okay, all right, okay. Let's breathe. Okay, I'll teach you how to breathe properly, because that's the first thing you should think about when you're really nervous out there. You got to breathe. You got to get into the inside to the now. So I'm out there going, okay, put your hand on your stomach. Go 1, 2, 3, 4 in. 1, 2, 3, 4 out. And we're doing this exercise for the 90 seconds that we had. But I think it helped. I don't know if it helped or not, but I think you won the match, which was
I think it helped. I think
it helped. I think you did.
I think so. And the incredible part, Billy, is that you know how some coaches, they're like, okay, I have what I want to say. I'm telling about X, Y, and Z, the X's and O's. This is what I need to convey. Billy was just like, okay, where are you? Let me gauge where you are, and then I'm going to kind of adjust what I say to you based on what you need, not what I want to tell you. And I just appreciate it. That's the only time I ever coached somebody in Fed Cup where I taught them how to breathe, actually on the change of ends, I can see it happening in practice, but it wasn't happening. And of course, I remember when Benny Sims, who also was a coach of yours, Chanda. Coach, yeah.
He was
my
great.
Coach the last
and I know he gave me such a wake-up call, he goes, hey, Billy, you got Fed Cup and you don't have any women of color. Why don't you get an assistant coach, for God's sakes? And I went, you're absolutely right, Benny. I'm going to see if I can. Because, there's a budget here. Yeah. And the women had been fighting Carol Caldwell Gravener, who was the chairperson. I went to her and I said, we got to find money in the budget because I want to get Zina Garrison as my first coach, assistant coach. And so we found the money, but it's like we had to argue. But we had the best players in the world playing in those days, too. We had you, and we had Lindsay, we had Celis, we had, do you remember the rookie year with Serena and
do I remember?
And got in Venus, remember in Ancona, Italy? Was that hilarious? That was one of the most hilarious weeks of my life.
You know what I always remember about that is teaching Serena how to hit a backhand cross court. And she said, I can hit one. And you said, no, that's still through the middle of the court.
Yeah, she couldn't hit cross court deep backhand.
Yes.
Correct.
I still remember that. And so we laughed and laughed. And I remember you came up to me and you're like, Zina, see, she still's not quite getting it. So we got to get her to understand this over a little closer to the line will help her pull people away in the situation when she's trying to pull them out. And I was like, okay. But we've had amazing. And one of the other lessons you taught me in Fed Cup, being an assistant, is I remember, I was like, why is Billy going over there to the stringer? And so you went over there, you asked the stringer a couple of questions, then you asked the trainers a couple of questions, and I'm like, what is Billy doing? And so then you came back to me, you said, Z, you have to bring everybody in to help the person that you're trying to help. The stringer, he can look at it, a situation, and see if, maybe their strings are too tight, or maybe it's too loose, or maybe they're stringing it this way. The masseuse will be able to tell if their body's too tight or if it's too loose or what we need to do. They're not drinking enough water with the trainer. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I took that, but then it helps me in life, and it has helped me in life because you can't do it by yourself. And I think today in this world, we really have to understand, that it's not anymore just a self-absorbed situation. You have to
particularly right. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But right now with the coronavirus and what people are going through and all the heartache they're going through and all the challenges everyone's going through, we really, in our isolation, we really do have to pull together. And this is one way to do it, just having this hour with people, maybe taking their minds off of something that's bothering.
Okay, so we're going to keep going because Billy's
Can you still see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Can you hear me? I know, but I'll let me see. Let me see here.
As
but you can keep talking.
All right. No, but I'm going to come. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me see.
Chanda, we'll tell you when we can hear you're back.
Anyway, I just think it's really important with everyone right now to, there's so many thoughts and prayers going to everyone and all the challenges, particularly the people who are taking care of others and people going to hospitals and putting themselves at risk, and everyone who's putting themselves at risk and everyone who's coming through is really important.
Well, so as we're talking,
where am I on?
I'm looking at my screen, so you may see me looking to the side because I'm looking at our feed.
Am I on yet?
You're not on. We can't see you, but we can still hear you. But so I'm looking at our feed from Facebook. I'm looking at people coming in saying hello. They're so excited to see us. The great tips, the great stories. They're loving it. I also have some questions from a few of people who've come in.
Okay. So, if I can answer them.
Well, we definitely have one about the Bobby Riggs match. So
of course,
if you don't mind, retell me some of that. Well, we have one question from Roger Rafa, who's asking about that match. Wants you to describe the pressure and preparation, what you recall from that match, the significance of the win, and your friendship with Bobby after post match.
Well, this match, and I knew going in. This was about social change. It wasn't just going to be about tennis or whatever. Tennis was in a very tenuous position at that time. Women's professional tour was only in its third year. Tennis as a pro sport was only in its fifth year. So this was a very significant match also on exposure because over 90 million people saw it worldwide.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be a lot. So Title IX had just been passed the year before. In 1972, when for the first time girls had athletic scholarships. We also, before 1972, there were classroom quotas. I don't know if a lot of people realize, but before Title IX was passed, if you wanted to say be a doctor at Harvard, they only allowed 5% of the class to be women. And that's why you have so many women at university and so many people at university and colleges now, so many women. In fact, we have more men than women, and now we need more men. So that's a whole other discussion, particularly Black and Hispanic and Latinx men have to be there. I'm having trouble trying to get it back on. So anyway, the match, there was some tremendous amount of pressure because I knew that...
Okay, you're back. We got you, Billy.
I tried that before. It didn't work. Thank you. Ilana helped me, my partner in crime in life. So anyway, the pressure was unbelievable. I knew it was a one-time only because I told Bobby I wouldn't play him again, no matter, because he kept saying, well, we make lots of money. We can do some more. I said, no, I'm not doing another match. This is about history. This is about social change. You don't understand it. For me, it's not about money. I know for you, Bobby, it is. But for me, it was so important to win. And I can remember how nervous I was about 6 weeks out, because we announced, I think, about 6 weeks before the match. And the only reason I played the match is he kept following me around before that, and I said I wouldn't play. But Margaret Court played him in May on Mother's Day, and she lost. And then because I told Larry, my former husband, I said, if Margaret loses, I'll have to play. I hope she wins, because I told Margaret, you have to win this match. I mean, you have to win this match. It's not about just tennis. And she says, okay, I got it. So she didn't play well, unfortunately, and so I knew I had to play. And so 6 weeks out, what I do is I visualize a lot. I visualize that everything can go wrong. The line calls. I can't see the ball because of the depth perception. It's in the Astrodome. It's humongous. Most tennis isn't played to that. So I knew how important it was. And the day before the match, I went and met every security guard, every administrator, because you can get lost in these arenas. They're huge. And the one thing I didn't want to do is get lost, because I had a lot to do. Yeah. They didn't put the court down until about an hour and a half before the match. They didn't have it finished. So we had to be quick studies. And that's where the champions adjust came into my mind a lot. Like, okay, you have to adapt. It's like if you're an understudy at the theater and all of a sudden the star can't perform, they go, oh, our understudy is going to be our person tonight. So you have to be able to really think quickly, adapt, and be very observant. But this was about something much bigger than myself, and I knew it, and I knew I had to win. And Bobby and I did remain friends until his last days. And the night before, I tried to see him a week before he passed away. He wouldn't let me come, but the night before I talked to him, thanks to Lorne Kuehl, who was his coach and dear friend, and he's a dear friend of ours. He told me he was getting near the end, so I made sure I called him. And we were great, and we both told each other we love each other. And he finally got the picture when I told him, and I said, this is about history and making a difference, Bobby. This isn't about just money. And he got it. He finally got it. But he was a hustler up to his last moments in life. He was hysterical. He couldn't help it.
I had an opportunity to actually be on the court with him. He scared me.
Oh, you did?
He walked out there with a big old, what is it, sugar baby?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a sugar baby outfit on.
That was his sponsor.
Oh. And
he got a lot of money for that from Don Johnson, who was the CEO. It's the Old Boy Network. They take care of each other.
Well, he scared me to death. He kept saying, Zia, what's the problem? What's the problem? I want to say your outfit, okay?
Why didn't you tell me?
Exactly. So we also have a question from Los Angeles from Vanessa Paul, who said, in hindsight, what improvement or change would you have pushed for back in the day for women's tennis that might not be happening now in women's tennis?
I'm not clear on the first part of the question. What would I have done differently, or what did we do that we did right?
Yes, that, exactly.
All right. In 1968, when tennis went professional, when you hear the word open, that means professional. I wish they would promote it differently. We had our 50th anniversary in 2018 because 68. Okay, so it was 50th. I was very excited because I thought we're finally going to be professionals, which I always fought for and got in trouble, actually. So when we finally had it, Rod Laver got a 2,000-pound check at Wimbledon in 1968, and I got 750 pounds. So I knew that we were like about 37.5%. So I knew that was going to be a challenge. But then they started dropping tournaments for women. And Larry, my former husband, told me, if it goes professional, the men will drop you and get rid of you. And I kept saying, no, they won't. They're my friends. I practiced with Laver and Stolle and Emerson and Roseball and Gonzalez and all these guys. No, they won't. Well, Larry was right. They got rid of, they started getting rid of a lot of tournaments for us. So we were getting desperate. So Larry said, why don't you go talk to Gladys Hellman, who was the publisher and editor of World Tennis Magazine, because she'll know all the advertisers. And if you know the advertisers, you know the CEOs. And maybe she can get you a sponsor.
Houston, Gladys Hellman, Houston.
You got that right. So Gladys was huge, and we signed a $1 contract with her. And there were 9 of us. Eventually, she did have a tournament in Houston. And there were 9 of us. Nancy Ritchie from West Angeles in there, Rosie Casals, Christy Pigeon. Some of these people won't even know their names, but we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We'll probably end up doing it next year because all the postponements and cancellations of the tournaments, but we'll probably be going to the majors and other tournaments and be appreciated. Hopefully we'll come to Houston. I don't know if we will, because we started the Houston Racket Club. But it was so important. Let me explain the 3 things that we thought about. And here's the most important things we thought about. At least I thought so. That we would have a place to compete was really important to us for the future. So any girl born in the world, if she's good enough, would have a place to compete. Number 1. Oh, wow. Number 2, that finally she would be appreciated for her accomplishments and not just her looks, not only her looks, which is what we had to deal with all the time. And number 3, that we'd be able to finally make a living. Those are the 3 things. And I cannot tell you how important the original 9 were. And then 3 years later, when we formed the WTA, when I founded the WTA at the Gloucester Hotel in 1973. Those 2 things were the major things. So it was the original 9. If we didn't have that, I don't know what would happen. And we owe so much to Gladys Hellman for that, because she went and got the sponsor. We owe a lot to Joe Coleman, the third, at Philip Morris. We owe a lot of, there's so many people that we owe that believed in us. And then to get equal prize money at the Open in 73 and 72, I put up a real stink with the media and said, if we don't get up to equal prize money next year, I'm going to go to the girls and I'm going to really ask us not to play next year. And so I thought, well, what can I bring, what can we bring to the table? So I went and talked to different sponsors, and Bristol Myers stepped up. Marvin Coslow, I talked to him a lot. He was a dear friend, and he worked with Bristol Myers. Bristol Myers stepped up and made up the whole difference for, when I talked to Billy Talbot, the tournament director, he couldn't believe it and then Cece Martinez had done a survey. She and Ismay passed it around to try to find out information with the fans, and it came back much more favorable for women than we thought it would. So I showed him the data, which was very crude data in those days, but at least it was data and then also I said to Billy, we have a sponsor to make up the whole difference in the prize money. So we'll have equal money. You will not have to go out and get a new sponsor or raise money in any way. We'll provide that. And he about fainted because I always think it's important if you can bring, you can't always, but you always want to try to figure out how to find the solution before you go into a meeting, or at least have suggestions, because sometimes you really don't know. Yeah. I knew what I wanted with this, and that's why I went out, because Larry and I had owned tournaments by then. So I understood the other side of the coin, and I wish every player would learn the business, because then they would ask, instead of saying, I just want more money, more this, more that, they would have a clue what that really means from a business point of view and what the other people have to provide. And I wish players would get much more involved with it. I wish they'd stay in the business of tennis when they leave the sport playing competitively. Particularly women should, I think. There's jobs there, but there's a lot of jobs in tennis.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Billy, because I remember when I came on as a junior way back then, Chanda was probably just a little baby. But anyway, I remember, you, Rosie Casal, and all of us, getting us together. And we had to go to those sponsorship parties. And
yes, you did.
Yeah. And I remember even the fact I remember doing my image consultant and how to speak to people and how to talk to people, how we looked, the colors that we wore for cameras and all of that. And you guys, and I remember the first time you said it to me, I was like, what? I'm like, okay, Billy, really? But then I as I got older and I started to understand, and you kept saying to me, and I don't even know if you remember that, you kept saying, if we don't do this, then there's no tour.
I would always say that. That's exactly what
you will not be eating.
Well, we don't. You know what? I wish the players would take a. All right, this is a good time. I was been thinking about this since we've had to self-isolate now. We can't play. The players. I'm saying they. Geez, I'm not playing anymore. So I'm just thinking about, this is the way it was for us before professional tennis. We didn't have any guarantees. We didn't have any money. We had 4 majors for sure, but they didn't pay us anything. And I don't think everybody's into the majors now. What I don't like is no one really understands the history. And we're one of the worst sports as far as understanding the history and how it evolved. I mean, Labor missed 5 years of playing majors. So when they put up he won 11 majors, I just want to cringe. And I get so upset that people don't go, oh, but by the way, he couldn't play 5 years of majors because he was a contract pro. And before we had open tennis or professional tennis for everyone, we had contract pros. In fact, there were 4 women who were the contract pros with George McCall, and that was Rosie Casals, that was Françoise Dewar, Ann Jones from England, and me. And George McCall had called me and said, well, I'm trying to get Margaret. I said, I doubt she'll do it, but I hope she does. But she didn't. So I said, well, who do you suggest? And I suggested those 3. First of all, they're from different countries. And also, I thought they knew how to handle the media correctly. We were going to try to grow the sport. And then we played with Labor. Just look at, these are the 6 guys, okay, with 4 of us. Labor, Rosewall, Emerson, Stolley, did I say Gonzalez, Jimeno? We had 6 of the top men players in the world, particularly with Labor and Gonzalez and those guys. I got to play mixed with Pancho Gonzalez. He probably had one of the best serves. I always tell kids to watch a loop of Pancho Gonzalez, Pete Sampras, and Serena Williams. Those three had the most beautiful technical serves ever in the history. And Serena, by far, is most beautiful. I just love to watch her serve. So anyway, I try to get, but kids don't like to watch old players. I love watching old players. I love the history. The more you know about history, the more you know about yourself. But most importantly, the reason you want to know about history is you can shape the future. And that's what the young people today have to understand. This is how you shape the future. Read. If you look at Gates, you look at Buffett, you look at all the Oprah, you look at the successful people, they spend an hour every day reading or talking to an expert in something. And that's the way to learn. That's why us going to meet with Althea. That's a legend sitting there. We get to talk to her and listen to her. And there's stories.
I'm gonna jump in a little bit, Billie, because part of this is we want to be as interactive as possible, and we have people.
Well, you haven't been enough.
I know. Well, no, and just from questions and comments on Facebook, so I want to kind of put that in because we've got some friends watching and listening in.
Hi,
we've got Leslie Allen listening in. We've got Carol Watson, who was one of my USTA coaches way back. She's listening. She's throwing out questions as well. We may not be able to get to everybody's questions here. I'm going to try to at least get to the ones directed at Billie because, Zina and I, we're going to be around. We're going to be doing this.
I know, but we should have, I like to listen to your story. So I get bored of talking about myself.
We're going to try to get some of that. So we're going to, kind of decide where we want to go with it. Delane Mass is listening in as well. And kind of to your point, Billie, what you were talking about in terms of what you felt, the responsibility, the vision you had for, what you wanted to see and what all of you women wanted to see who were stepping up, a place to play where you weren't judged on your looks and where you could earn a living. And, so Delane's question, and it kind of tags off of that, why do you feel that social responsibility and equality became your motivation and who inspired you in your life?
Well, I think I mentioned it when I was 13. Yeah, when I was 13, I had my epiphany where I said, where's everybody else? That really started it. Like there weren't any people of color playing. I didn't see anybody else but white people playing until I saw Althea. And finally I said, there was at least one black. And of course, as a child, I didn't know about the ATA. The American Tennis Association was started in 1916 by a group of blacks because they couldn't enter into white tournaments, which is pathetic. And people don't realize when the ATA started, they let anybody play. They did it the right way. Until 1950, black people could not play at what we know today as the U.S. Open. And Althea Gibson was the first ever. She won the French in 56. She won Wimbledon in 57, 58. She had the Queen give her trophy, which has only happened about twice. Virginia had it in 1977. Then 57 or 8, the Queen was there to give Althea her trophy. So it was fantastic. But that's really, and then Delane I've known forever. She's out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and she runs the World Team Tennis community leagues. I don't like to say rec. They don't like to say rec, but I call them rec leagues. But about 15 to 20,000 people play, and in November I usually go. We don't own team tennis anymore. We sold it through 2 or 3 years ago to Fred Luddy and different people, and it's going strong. They have more teams, and they're playing July, and so we'll see. I don't know if it's going to happen obviously this year, but in general it's been happening. They had their All-Star game. They got that in, which I heard was very successful. I was out of the country, but it's supposed to be very good. And then I still do the Philadelphia Freedom.
Billie, I have a question all the way from London, England. So it's from Berna McKinsley, and she said, I've heard tennis players talk about fear of winning. In these uncertain times of a fear of our future, what would you recommend ways of dealing with such fears?
I think they're very legitimate fears, and I think it means you really care and you are concerned, which is good. So I think you need to say, okay, this is the way it is. I still think the only way to win in life is to use this time, because we have to self-isolate. We don't, at least we do. I'm in New York City, so I can tell you we have to, and I want to. And so I think what I always do is think of one ball at a time or one moment at a time. It's also a good time to reflect. It's also a good time to reach out like through texting or even this way, I think it's a good time to appreciate what we have, because it gives us time to pray and to think and reflect. Also, it's a great time to get ahead on, say, what you're trying to do with your life. So when things get back to normal, you're going to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. So I think use this time in a way that you think's best for you. If you need to just do nothing for a while and get your sleep and whatever you need, and also try to work out even though you're indoors. I still think exercise is really, really helpful. It takes the tension off of us. And also, I think I'm very big on meditation and taking and yoga, if you like that. All these things can help you feel better. But it depends on you. But I think you need to know that this will pass too. And that we've got to be very, very patient and loving and kind and good right now to each other. And stay away, though, from each other. That distance of 6 feet or more, we have to do this. And if you listen to Bill Gates, we're so far behind the curve, we're in tough shape. We don't have enough ventilators, and we don't have enough of these things. So we need to help when you can from a distance. But this is a time to use. I mean, I personally am great at staying indoors, and I'm great at being a cave woman. So I've used it, boy. I just let go. But I'm also older.
And it's interesting that you say, one ball at a time. I think tennis players have a actual, they're ahead of the game in the way that we learn the game, being able to deal with things if we are real with what's going on, because it really is that one ball at a time, one moment at a time. You have to learn to self-correct in a quick instant. You ain't got time to think about a lot of things. So I know for myself personally, when I start feeling a little bit down when I go back to some of those lessons that I learned in tennis, and it'll click me right back in.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you, Chanda?
Yeah, what helps you, Chanda?
Well, Zina, I definitely feel like, tennis, you learn you have nowhere to hide. So you're out there on, whatever court you're playing on, fans, tens of thousands of people watching, whatever you're dealing with off the court, for me at least, whatever's going on, that's going to show itself if you haven't dealt with it, if you don't deal with it. And I always felt like that was what I challenged myself to do, so that when I got out there on court, I could just bring all of my focus, all of my efforts. I had the belief, because I dealt with whatever issues I needed to off the court. And that for me was an ongoing thing, but it was one of the things I certainly focus on. And Zina, kind of along those lines, I have a question for you from Carol Watson.
Zina, Carol. Yay, Carol.
U.S. Open. Coach. Hey, Carol. Can you? Yes. Carol is asking, can you speak about your U.S. Open match where you defeated Chris Evert and retired her retirement match there, what it meant to you and your career?
Well, you know what is interesting about that match is I was the one crying and Chrissy was not crying and she retired. So that picture is in history forever. And it's so funny because recently I saw the picture when I was at the U.S. Open this year doing some commentary, and they showed it because Naomi hugged Coco, and consoled her after the match. So they were saying that wasn't the first time. But it's so interesting. But that particular match, what the biggest thing was for me is I went one entire month playing tournaments. And first of all, I was called a villain when I got into the press room, which I did not understand that. And I said to Willis Thomas, who was my coach at the time, they call me a villain. But then I went to play tournaments, and I never forget playing Gabriella Sabatini, and I was playing well, and I was hitting balls and, hitting good shots. No one was clapping for me. No one. Silent. And I was like, what is going on? So I end up a couple of weeks later going to my goddaughter's school. And so I was going to speak at her school. So I walked in, and this lady says to me, because you beat Chris Evert, I stopped liking you then. I was like, what? And she's like, I wouldn't clap for you. I saw you play afterwards. And then it came to me is, we all love Chrissy so much that, I really did become the villain. And, but so it's just interesting. That particular match really just taught me that even though I was ever tennis racket, and I knew what Chrissy brought to the game. But for me, it was something totally different than the world saw it at that particular time.
Yeah, well, they didn't listen to Chris, because Chris said if I had to lose a match, Zina would be the one I want to lose to. So they didn't listen to Chrissy on that either, because Chrissy was going to retire that U.S. Open anyway.
They didn't get that far.
After the tournament.
No. Not at all. Well, we have an easy question. We have an easy question. What was your conversation like, Billie?
With Chris?
With Chris about that, yeah.
Well, one of the challenges every generation has when they get to the end, it's hard to know when to stop because you love it so much. And Chris and I had probably discussions 4 years before that match with Zina, because she was starting to, not be number one all the time, and it's not fun because she's used to it. Although she had Martina to contend with, and Martina had Chrissy, but she still loved to play and entertain people and everything. But she said to me afterwards, she said, well, if I'm going to lose to somebody, no one's nicer and more kind than Zina. So I was going to retire after this tournament anyway. So I think it's wonderful that it was Zina. And that was it. But it took about 4 years of dealing and playing and deciding when she was going to retire. But I think she was hoping to win that U.S. Open maybe, but it was a long shot and she knew it. But when Zina beat her, she said, gosh, of all the people to beat me, you know how much I love Zina. So I thought it couldn't be better, but I'm so sorry. I didn't realize Zina went through all that afterwards. She's so bad. I remember telling Zina
about that.
I remember telling Zina, I said, Zina, you deserve the best that life has to offer. So it's good. Because I remember, sometimes we feel like we don't deserve things. And I think it's real important to know you do deserve it. Every human being deserves the best out of what life has to offer.
Absolutely. And people don't really understand him. Well, they wouldn't, because it's not like I'm a big talker or something like that. But Billie,
when you get to know you, Zina, you are.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Okay. But Billie, one thing that I always loved about you is, and especially at some of our Fed Cup talks or just talking period, is you would always ask me the other side. Zina, you're a black woman, so how does it feel this?
Yeah,
I would appreciate it that you wanted the information. And I remember, I was a little shy and I was a little not willing to kind of open up at that point. I know I said that I was a little shy, not anymore. But one of the things I loved about you is that you kept on me, and you always told me, and I always remember that you and Arthur Ashe basically is like, Zina, you got to be a leader. You got to be a leader. It's got, there's nothing else to it. I constantly, I was a leader in my head, but it was always sometimes difficult for me to, I had a lot of thoughts, but to speak out. So I just want to personally say to you on air right now, I thank you for pushing me to be where I am now, because it is a big part of my life. And no matter what, I am always thinking of others. And like Chanda said, she didn't really tell you the whole thing. When I called her, I'm like, Chanda, I got this great idea. And then she brought me on back down. But it's okay, because,
it's working. Chanda, what about you? Chanda, what about you?
Back down, and she's like, we got to, that's the great thing about Chanda. She's going to give you the details and all of that things with it. But the thing for me, the very first thing I thought about was, what about those pros that, they have a lesson, and that's how they feed themselves for the first week, I'm like, they're going to be the last ones that the tennis industry thinks about on the totem pole. And then the next thing is, I told Chanda, because then all of a sudden I said, oh, Lord, I run a foundation. We have no kids. I'm unemployed. So you just...
it's really rough. That's why I don't...
So saying all that... I
don't have the answers, but I think even doing things like this, reminding people of your academy and, reminding people is all we can do right now. And then try to help if we can. But people, they're unemployed. They're going to need their own money, and it's going to be tough, man. We're going to be in a recession for a while, and we're going to have to suck it up and just start thinking about it now, how you can save from spending. I would right now, if you, it depends on the situation. But Chanda,
Billie, let me say this right quick. What I like that you said is start thinking of ways for when we do come back. And so I took that out when you said that. Like, that has really registered for me. And so we are where we are. We're hitting. You can only hit the ball that's in front of you. You cannot hit anything else. If it
that's right. That's it.
Nothing else. So it ain't no use to me becoming now all of a sudden a worry for a ball that has not come my way yet. So, so these are things. But once again, for any of those who do want to donate for the future, go to ZinaGarrison.org. That's ZinaGarrison.org. And also, if you guys do like what Chanda and I are doing, make sure you join our page, but make sure you also say something about it. And also, Billie is huge on Twitter. So every morning, Billie is...
I did do a Twitter. I did an Instagram, I think I did, yeah.
No,
I am a social content person, but I talk to her every day and I okay everything.
But
I try to get it out. I hope that helped get people on today. But Chanda, I want to ask Chanda, I've been dying because I watch Chanda's channel all the time. Tell me about what it's like to be announcing so much now. I mean, you're doing a lot.
It's evolved, and I didn't have any expectations. Kind of when I started, I have people that sort of ask me, "Did you just start? Like we've just been seeing you the last couple of years more so?"
Oh no,
no. I've been doing it almost since I retired, and that was in 2008 officially. I retired because of injury. Had tried the last 3 years of my career and just couldn't get back. So I was in a really difficult place mentally and just trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do next? I was hugely disappointed with the way my career had ended. But, often, Billie, you talk about it. You've got to move on. You've got to move, to what you can affect, to what's in front of you. And, so it was just trying to find things that I enjoy, things that I, would have somewhat of a passion for. I started commentating along with doing real estate. So those are my two things when I retired. I got a real estate license.
You do real estate too?
I own commercial property. I was a leasing agent. I was like everything. I was going to the office every day, did a huge renovation project. So I was doing that, and then I was also commentating. So when I would get opportunities, it was really through networking and people calling. Are you available? Can you do Indian Wells? Can you do Miami? I started with those events, and it just kind of grew a little bit each year. I started doing some things for other different networks, and I was a bit of a television mutt. Is kind of what I called myself a little bit, because I was just working different tournaments. I didn't have contract with anybody. There was no guaranteed money or anything like that, but it was just important for me to get reps and to get better. And again, it's just one of those lessons I learned from people like you who were such an influence in my life. Like, you get better, you hone your craft. It's not really about the money. If you are doing what you're supposed to do, if you're doing it in a way that brings value, all that's going to come. And so that was just always my motivation. And fortunately, I started working with a great group at Tennis Channel, and it's been amazing. They've slowly, incorporated me more and more each year, and it's been a lot of fun. I learn from everybody, and so that's the other part of it too. I'm constantly trying to take in what I like about what others are doing, this little bit or that little bit, how I can use that to improve what I'm doing, and how I deliver what I'm saying, how thoughtful I am about what I'm saying. And so it's a challenge, and I'm enjoying it. I cannot complain. I mean, sometimes I wonder, is this a job? Like, I shouldn't even be making money doing it, but it's a lot of fun.
And Chanda, you are very good. So
you've gotten so much better through the years. That's why I know you've been at it a long time. I remember you and I used to talk when you were just starting, and you're going, "Wow." Yeah. I said, just get better and better, and tell them what you don't see. I think we talked about that.
Right.
Something like that. I just remember us having a really good talk one day, and just keep doing it, because you have to do it all the time to be any good.
I think so, and I think people don't really think about. Okay, so you get players that retire and they'll go into commentating. You don't practice. You don't get like a little test run, or it's one thing to play the game, to be coached and to get information, but now you have to give information, process it based on how you think, and then convey it in a way that makes sense. That's meaningful enough within the match, because the match isn't about you at the end of the day. And so you really don't get any practice when they put you right into these situations. And then
it's really hard.
Can you do a show? Can you sit on a couch and do a live show? Can you go do an on-court interview? The match is about to end in 15 minutes. Yeah, get some questions and come on. Like, it's literally like you're just saying, oh yeah, I can do it. And you have no idea sometimes.
That's like that ball coming to the net at you real quick. You ain't got time to think about it.
That's exactly.
I have another question that I've been dying to, because I will see your Twitter and all that and stuff. So, and we talked a little bit earlier about the original 9, and it's been 50 years and all that. But you're also doing something very special in hockey.
Well, we're trying to help. We try to help women's sports because our Billie Jean King Enterprises is a for-profit business, and our Billie Jean King Leadership Initiative is nonprofit. And so we're spending a lot of time on the initiative. And one of the things, if you look at all women's sports, and of course I love team sports as well, growing up in team sports, that they didn't even have an association or a union. So Ilana, my partner in life, and runs the business really with others, with Marjorie Gantman and Teresa Higgins, a nice Irish girl. It's amazing how behind they are in their thinking. I'm in shock. I go, well, you have a union, don't you, or an association? And they go, no. I go, what? I go, how are you going to negotiate? You need one voice. What happens with these sports? They get stuck into this their national teams. You remember the soccer and Rapinoe and all the players are trying to get equal money and all that. The challenge is, if I were in that position, which I'm not, I think they've done a great job. I really admire all of them. Is Carrie Lloyd, all these guys, Carly Lloyd, that I would not be happy with just getting equal money for the national team. It's only 20 to 23 women or 25 women. I would worry about the league. They have 9, for instance, soccer, they have 9 teams. That's what I would have been talking about, because that's opportunity for like 400 people or women. We have to get it so you provide more opportunity for more. And look at the men. They have 800 men in baseball. They have over 700 in the NHL, the National Hockey League. If you look at all these different leagues that men are in, they're providing people 800 men, it doesn't matter, people to make a living. And we don't have that in women's sports. We have to find a way. And so I want every women's sport to do well, because I think that helps each other. I think it gets women's sports in general out there, that people think about us. And they think about tennis. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's been the leader. The LPGA had a union or a association in 1950 with 13 players. They were the co-founders. But as soon as tennis got going in 1970, we went ahead of them in a year and a half in prize money and winning and everything, in media time, everything. So a lot of it has to do with, who's in there, who's doing what. But women's team sports have a long way to go. We need to do that. But women's tennis, I think this is a very crucial year with not having all these tournaments, all the money that's being lost for our sport and all the other sports. But let's get more narrow, think about ourselves here. I think it's going to be a real challenge. I think we need to really pay attention. I always wanted the men and women to be together back in the late 60s and early 70s, and they rejected us. They always rejected us. I helped them. I went to Arthur and everybody about the boycott. They all rejected us. They just, every time I go to them, they go, "We're not interested in you guys. Just go away," basically. So I was like, oh. So anyway, that's why we had our union by ourselves.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is, Billie? We have
because men.
We have. Let me say, we have about 4 or so minutes left, so we definitely want to be
because we're
conscious
not,
of your time. But
the dominant
why do you think
group,
that is?
Okay, sorry, I'm interrupting. The dominant group, no matter who it is, doesn't care about the non-dominant group. The non-dominant group has to learn how to navigate the powerful ones. And until men think about their daughters the way they think about themselves, if they deserve the most and everything, they don't like to share. They think that every time we make $1, that should have been their dollar. And it's not true. And not all men are like that now. The younger men today are so much better about doing things together. So I think things will change because the people in power, which are mostly men, I do think they care about us a lot more than they used to. And it's good business. They've proven when women are on a board that they make up to 16% more net profit when there's women involved. It makes good business. So when things make good business, just get it done and be inclusive. Make sure you don't just get the people who are just like yourself.
Well,
now, go ahead, Zina.
It's very interesting you said that because, unfortunately we lost Kobe Bryant and with his daughter.
Yes, and he was really helping girls.
I was trying to always try to look at something positive that comes out of it. I have been loving the fact of, Daddy's Girls and seeing these people spend the guys spending more time with the girls, yes. And also looking at women's sport. He actually, unfortunately we lost him, but he shined a huge light onto, them watching women's sports. Mm-hmm. And for me, someone, and especially like you said, in this crucial time, and I'm naming you this today right now. You are the godmother of soul, godmother of sports.
Thank you.
Godmother of sports. You got soul too, Billy, but I meant.
I know. For a white girl, I do.
But this is a crucial time. You're here. People, we should be listening to you. I know you don't want to be out there talking so much, but,
I'm out there.
Be asking some questions to you because you have 50 years. The Women's Tennis Association would not be around the way it is now today if it wasn't for you pushing or equal rights or, the LGBT community. I mean, all these things, great things that you're doing. And I do think, and I'm very proud that you're getting your due right now. But I know for you, first of all, thank you again for being on this show. But people want to hear from you. They want to hear your voice. And even if you do it behind closed doors, I think some of those people out there should call and ask, what should we be doing? And especially our tennis community. We got to collaborate because
we have to help the kids, like with your academy. We have to help grassroots a lot. How do we get started? We get started locally. We need to support children. If there's a tennis court and you go out on a tennis court, unless someone's there to help you or organize it, it's hard to get very good. So we need people to, I really appreciate all the teaching. I don't like calling them teaching professionals. I like to call them coaches. Kids like the word coach. I get rid of the word teaching professional in our sport. I would change our sport totally.
Well, look, you're the godmother of sport. If you want us to call it coaching, we call it the coaching as today.
Well, I think don't you think the kids like coaching better?
Yeah, they do.
Professional. Chili?
Absolutely. It's clearer as well. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, everybody loves their coach, and they have coaching in basketball and every other sport. So let's make it easy.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, one of, kind of maybe the last thought, because we have Tracy St. John who's been listening in as well.
Oh, she's great.
Good comments. Tracy, hey. She had a question kind of about the WTA, how you see the organization today. And I guess kind of, playing off of that, off of some of the things you've already said, are there things that you think the WTA could be doing differently or that you might like to see, compared to where it was when you started, how it's progressed, and the opportunities today?
Yeah, I would like a rookie school. We've been talking to them for like 3 or 4 years. I'd like a rookie school. This is a real good time because things aren't, there's no tournaments. This is a good time, I think, to reimagine what we need to do for the future. We want to make sure that enough players can make a living, but we also can't provide a living to everyone. That's why the ITF is so important. I think that we should have team. We're talking about WTA. WTA, I would just relook at everything the way we're organized. Do we need to reorganize? Do we need to do something different for the future? And this is a good time because we have a break. This is a great time.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
No, but I think we can be a lot stronger with our media too.
I love the fact of having a rookie school because, you could have the opportunity to teach it from the ground up. And even when you say a rookie school, Billy, I see that going even a little deeper, especially for those ones that are coming up. We have to catch them before. And you said something early, and we have to also, as women, believe and understand you also can be coached by another woman.
Yes, that's a problem.
It drives me absolutely crazy when you go and you'll ask me questions, but you'll go and get a guy coach, and I'm the one that's helping you tell, so it's like you have faith to put a woman coach out there as well and not be afraid of it, from the men or the women.
Absolutely.
I think women should be supporting women a lot more than they do, and I think men should be supporting us. Why can't a woman can also coach anybody?
Yeah,
the racket doesn't know who's playing with it. They don't know.
That's starting to change. It's starting to change.
We're also going to be challenged with non-binary things, also transgenders that want to play. That's going to be, we need science really to step up research in that area to figure out, because I want everyone to have a chance to play. Everyone deserves a chance to dream the dream, whatever it is for them. I mean, I dreamt about playing professional baseball, and at 9 years old, I realized, oops, only boys play baseball at the top level. So thank God for tennis. That's all I can say. That, but it was amateur when I played. I mean, there was no big. But to go to Wimbledon and play Wimbledon was such a big deal as an amateur in the old days. Because in the old days, if you didn't win Wimbledon, you weren't number one that year. So there was a lot of pressure on winning Wimbledon. So it wasn't we didn't have computer rankings until basically when I was getting ready to retire. So people don't, that's another thing they don't put up there. They just, I just wish we were more accurate. We're not accurate, okay? We don't know history. So when something comes up on a chart or a fact, everybody's just talking like it's now, and they don't really realize, like, they don't even count half of our tournaments because we were amateurs, and it's like, you can't do that. You have to do our whole career. So, I mean, things like that.
Billy, I have to tell this one quick story. Hold on, Chuck. I got to tell you.
Hey, Zina, you're going to be quick because we have gone over our time. We could talk to Billy for hours here, and really, we hope we'll have you back on.
I will come back on. What? Ask me?
Okay, real quick. I just want to say that, when all this stuff started going on, I just want the audience to know as well. I sent Billy this text because Billy always talked about, help me understand me being an introvert. And so Billy finally texted me back, and the text said, hey, Billy, I need to talk to you. The introvert is actually, I was like, because I was forced to stay inside, I was ready to go outside and do something. So this led on to the conversation about also talking to Billy. So I just want to thank you for helping the introvert over here. And I want to thank you for keeping me, at bay, because I am very creative. But you guys, this has been so much fun. I love you guys.
We'll have to do it again. We just got warmed up. I just want to hear more stories about you guys. I love hearing your stories. And Chanda, you have a baby now, don't you? Don't you have a baby?
I have a 3-year-old. She's been running around here. I do, and and I have a couple of stepkids too.
What's her name?
So we've got 3, but her name is Harper.
It's
Harper Grace.
Cute. All right, well, that's great. I wish I'd seen him. I haven't seen him yet.
Canda's been a homeschool teacher, so
You've been doing it.
Tell her about a thing that I just found out about learning everywhere, so she could possibly, get in some learning. But shout out to the homeschool teachers, Chanda Rubin.
Yeah, all the people are helping.
Hats off to teachers.
Yeah, everyone's making a difference in their own way, and right now this is the time to really stay together, even though we're apart. So thanks for doing this today. This was fun. I just love the fact I get to see Chanda and Z. I never get to see you guys.
Blast. This has been a blast, Billy. Thank you again for joining
thanks
us.
Thanks for all the questions, everybody that watched and sent in questions. And some of them we knew their names, and they're also contributed so much to our sport. Anyway, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me. Game, set, match at a distance. Yes.
Game, set, match from a distance. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and stay tuned. We'll do this again.
Thanks.